Good evening, everyone, again. Today, we are in a special conversation with two experts in the subject of tapping David Zini for the Shin Bet. My name is Ophir Gutelzon from UnXeptable, an international movement to protect the Israeli democracy led by Israelis abroad together with American Jews. We are delighted to host today in this difficult situation two guests. The first one to talk to us would be Hilo Glazer. If you read the Haaretz newspaper, you know his in-depth investigative reporting. And recently he wrote about the tapping of David Zini for the role of the head of the Shin Bet by Netanyahu. And we also have with us lawyer Yair Nehorai, who spoke to us in the past about messianism. And I'll jump right into the Hilo, first of all, thank you for joining us. I assume you're in Tel Aviv, correct? Correct, from the deep south of Tel Aviv. We hope there will be no alarms. I don't know if you can hear the bombings from Gaza. People tell me that they can be heard. Not here, but it is still very worrying and saddening, and it feels helplessness and terrible. Yeah, we feel very helpless as well, waking up to this. I'd like you to present the subject. Let me say a couple of words about it. The tapping of David Zini, it is something that Netanyahu announced after firing Ronen Bar. And now we are in this expedited process of appointing him to the head of Shin Bet. Hilo, you'll talk to us in depth about why we're so fearing that. First of all, Netanyahu himself interviewed for a few months David Zini for the job of his military secretary, and he was under the impression that he was too messianic, and therefore he did not appoint him to that job, the military secretary. His name came up again as a candidate for the chief of staff, and he was the favorite candidate by Sarah Netanyahu. How come that person who was not good enough to become military secretary and now he's a candidate for the chief of staff? Lots of question marks. We know that his brother, Shmuel Zini, he is the manager of Simon Falek's businesses in Israel, the Falek family that is very benevolent, benefiting the Netanyahu family, Sarah Netanyahu, Yair Netanyahu that moved to Florida. Just to mention, the Faleks live in Miami, and they also have a large house in Jerusalem where Netanyahu and his wife are being hosted. Is it because of this previous contact? Was it that his name was dropped all of a sudden? We don't know what was going on between Shmuel Zini and Sarah Netanyahu in their conversation, but it seems weird. And then, as you mentioned, Ronen Bar was fired, and whoever did not want Zini as the chief of staff will probably get him as the Shin Bet director. Why is it worrying? Beyond that impression of Netanyahu, we know that David Zini is not fit for the job for various reasons. Looking at it more narrowly, he doesn't have the experience. He never worked in intelligence. He was never even an officer, an intelligence officer of any organization. He is unfit because of the process in which he was appointed. We would have expected him to say, I remove myself from this process, and I refer to a conversation that took place in Tzelim, in the southern part of Israel. Netanyahu called him into his car, almost like what you expect to see in the market. Just a sec. Let me stop you because you assume that people know about things, and here they might not. Ronen Bar did not finish his tenor as scheduled, and we should remind that Netanyahu is in a conflict of interest, legally speaking, because of the Qatar affair. So let's talk a little bit more about that context. So in fact, there are two comments to the process of appointment. One, Netanyahu, according to the Attorney General, was in a conflict of interest when he fired Ronen Bar because Qatargate was some of the motivation for that investigation, or for that firing. The second comment is how Netanyahu proposed that to Zini. He was then the chief of the commander of Tzelim, the military base. He was called for just an off-the-record conversation in Netanyahu's car, and in that conversation, he offered him the job. And the military secretary is the one in charge of those types of conversations. Roman Goffman, the military secretary of Netanyahu, did not know of this. And when Zini was later asked, what were you doing there? Zini said, we talked about recruiting the Haredi population to serve in the IDF. These are the two comments regarding the process itself. Let me say right away, I have a message here that I would like to come through. I think that adhering to these two comments, to those technical controversies, is a mistake that the liberal camp is doing. It's a mistake on the part of those who wish to see Israel as a democratic state, a state that is liberal democratic. I think that focusing on the procedure may too easily, bring about a disastrous appointment because of more significant reasons. And Yair may be able to talk more about it. I think that Zini is a product of the Rabbi Tau community. He grew up in that environment. The Rabbi Tau is from the most extreme margins of the nationalistic Judaism. He's the head of the Mor Yeshiva. It's an offspring of the Kook Yeshiva. He established a series of halachic institutions. It is the most extreme margins opposing anything liberal, women's rights, LGBTQ, any cooperation with non-religious population. And I'm not a theologist. Unlike Yair, I did not spend my life fighting this current, but these are very strict views that these people hold. And in Israel, we kind of normalized those ideas because they have the party, the Noam party, who sits in the government. It is represented in the Knesset by Avi Maoz, the Knesset member, But I think that we can still agree on the fact that that Rabbi Tau, the Noam Party, all those Har More yeshivas are fringe, extremely dangerous fringe. We had dangerous people in all kinds of posts or roles. They are dangerous because of what they aim to do. They are against the state of Israel. Now, people tell me, why are you talking about the place where he grew up, his family, his background, only in the case of Zini? And my answer is as follows. David Zini not only grew up into that reality, he chose it actively and invested many days, many hours, long hours in his last role as a military general studying in the Har Amor yeshiva. So when he was still in the army, he wasn't very busy. He went and took classes as a commander from Yoshua Zuckerman, who is the right hand of Rabbi Tau. Whoever says that Zuckerman is his rabbi actually follows the Rabbi Tau halacha, so to speak, or school. So not that he only was, it's not that he was only born into that world, he chose it actively. He is not giving interviews about it, and when he talks only about the dead ones, the dead, in memorials, in ceremonies. You can see that redemptive viewpoint in the words that he says there publicly. I will give the floor to Yair in a minute. Yesterday, last minute, I shared the Raviv Drucker's clips. He was talking about the ideology of those people surrounding David Zini. It doesn't mean that what your family thinks, you think too, but it's pretty worrying. We at least expect him to say that he disagrees. First of all, when you ask him to respond, he ignores those requests. And I'd like to make it clear, it's not that he's not talking. For example, less than a year ago, he participated in a memorial for the Netzach Yehuda, the Haredi military battalion, and he mentioned Rabbi Mazuz. He speaks beautifully about him. He was praising him. The Rabbi Mazuz is from the most right-wing extreme margins, and he's also the political patron of Itamar Ben-Gvir, Baruch Marzel, the Otzma Yehudit. And again, in Israel, we normalized the fact that these people receive key appointments. But this is Kahanism. This is what we call unacceptable, says Ophir. This is Kahanism in its most distilled way, essence. And he gives there a rather elaborated story about the Bar Kochva rebellion and Rabbi Akiva, who was the right hand of Bar Kochva. It's a very controversial period in our history, and David Zini gives a speech and explains how, even though tens of thousands of the students of Rabbi Akiva were killed in the rebellion, and he gives a very graphic description about their rotting corpses. And when he speaks to his own audience, he says, in spite of the butchery of the killing, and of course, it brings you immediately to October 7th, he says, even in spite of this killing, the kingdom will go back to Israel, will come back to Israel. This is a good point to turn to Yair, because we keep hearing those expressions, those declarations from the camp. We hear from that camp about redemption. It's a miracle. October 7th was a miracle. So give us your overview of what's going on. How have we ended up in a situation where these people are an option as candidates after Netanyahu himself said they were too messianic? Let's put some order in our facts here. Who is Zini? There's an attempt. It's really interesting. Zini does not talk. People talk about his surroundings a lot, and everyone who speaks about him says, well, that's his surroundings, but it's not him. But I would like to say something different. I think that when you look at what his wife says and how she raises their kids, it is him, because at the end of the day, this is the education that he gives to his own family. And he should have the onus of the proof and say that he is not like that. So whoever knows the book that his wife wrote sees or understands that she is a soldier of Rabbi Tau. Now, what is Tau? Tau believes that our existence, the existence of the state of Israel, is the first stage on the path to redemption. We live here as beasts. We, the liberal, non-religious current, and in that sense, all Jews around the world, our goal was to start to lay the foundation, the physical foundation of the state of Israel, and now it's time to go to the higher level and put a kippah on the sand. This is the period that we now live in. He believes that the liberal democratic state has finished its role, and now it is endangering its mere existence. Now, the whole story of the judicial reform that they started is aimed to advance their goal for the state of Israel to become a messianic dictatorship. Now, let's go back to Zini. This is the language that he hears at home. His wife says, our role as occupiers is we run the wars of God, and we need to apply the Torah. Why is it so significant? Why is it so critical? Because first of all, the Jewish democratic state of Israel fights for democracy. When people go to fight, they fight to protect the democratic character and to protect and defend the land. We have no interest in occupying territory, but not in Zini's home. At the Zini's home, the occupation is the goal. Not only is it the goal, it is the divine decree. I would like to refer to what Hilo told us earlier. Zini speaks about the fallen soldiers of the Haredi population. He goes back to Rabbi Akiva, and it goes back to the people who were beheaded, Olei Agardom. Here's the story. All of us know that Rabbi Akiva declared the Bar Kokhba as the Melech Mashiach, the King Messiah. It was a religious war. And when speaking about the Lehi, the pre-state underground, that unlike the Haganah organization, they viewed the process as a redemptive one. Zini says the following: even though the Bar Kokhba rebellion was the first Holocaust of the Jewish people, it was a terrible disaster. Hundreds of thousands were killed. The kingdom of Judea broke down. And he says that the bodies of the 24,000 soldiers were not rotten. And this is a sign that God intervened. He believes that for 30 years, the two Lehi fighters were not rotten after they were executed. He says, I fight God's war. And how does it influence us? Because when a person fights the wars of God, he does not fight the wars of Israel. On the contrary, he fights against Israel. Automatically, inherently, you cannot fight. I'll say it in another way. You have to fight. The rights of the LGBTQ, you have to fight feminism because it destroys the family cell. And you have to fight the reform movements because they include liberal elements. You have to fight non-religious who want to return land to the Palestinians. When a person says that he is fighting the wars of God, he is telling you that he is fighting the democratic liberal state of Israel. And now, if he heads the Shin Bet, the real question is, what is he going to do in that job? Is he going to turn his back to his Rabbi Tau? And I'd like to go back to what I said when I started. When his wife says that they speak the Rabbi Tau's language, it is on him to prove that they don't. This is his rabbi, the founder of the Har Mor Yeshiva. He, ideologically speaking, is committed to Rabbi Tau. What is he going to do tomorrow when he's in the Shin Bet, who, according to his belief, threatens the Jewish state? And then we go back to the publications of what he says using the Tau language to let me say the following. Every liberal person in Israel needs to be scared. If this person realizes even some of the precepts, the concept that he believes in, the Shin Bet will go in a certain direction. Let's say that if until yesterday, the Shin Bet saw the Hilo youth as a threat to democracy, tomorrow Shin Bet will see the Kaplan demonstrators as the threat to Israel. Rabbi Tau is viewed as the Sanhedrin, as the sages. This is such a dangerous event for Israel. And I think that the systems that need to make that appointment possible need to look into those questions. And I repeat, I don't know what he's going to do, but this is something that should be looked into. Let me add Hilo to the spotlight, because the question is, there are some things that already happened. When Ronen Bar was the head of Shin Bet, and they were dealt with in the declaration that Ronen Bar submitted to the Supreme Court against his firing. Maybe one of you can talk about it, Hilo, maybe you. The job of the Shin Bet, the Israel Security Agency, is first of all to defend the security of Israel. It's a little bit like the FBI here in the United States. And just like the FBI has to protect democracy, the Shin Bet in Israel is to defend Israeli democracy. Of course, there are lots of parallelism to what's going on in Israel. Patel, who does not come from a background of the FBI, and now he heads it. But here we have the religious element, not just the conspiratory elements. But what do you think could happen? Let's take a step back. When is he going to be appointed, Hilo? First of all, let me tell you a little anecdote to connect what Yair said to the question that you are posing. When I worked on my article and I interviewed Yair, he told me, does anybody expect? Let me add one more thing. The Shabak, the Shin Bet has the Jewish division, who is in charge of stopping terrorism that is not Arab terrorism. For example, the Hilo youth in the West Bank, and this is supposed to be a very important element of its functioning. And when I spoke to Yair before publishing the article, he told me something very true and prophetic even. In our crazy reality, he told me, somebody really expect for Zini to act against the messianic cells in the extreme margins of the Zionist Judaism, the national Zionist movement. This is his home. And indeed, Sefi Ovadia, our colleague from Channel 12, came up with a publication that a close family member of Zini works for that Jewish division. And Zini received a call. He was asked to check on a very similar, a very close person to him. This is absurd. Now, you asked me about the authorities of Shin Bet regarding protecting democracy. But even before that, when is the appointment supposed to happen? 10 days, starting September 11th. So 5 days to submit um, 5 days to submit objections, and then 5 more days. Shin Bet has lots of authority with huge control. The meeting point of such an environment with somebody who comes from the environment of Zini would have been regarded a few years back in Israel as craziness. Now, let's talk more in detail. The head of Shin Bet, or Shin Bet in general, can, as you said, can tap on people's calls, and it has some authority regarding privacy. While the police needs a judge to give them authority to listen or to tap on conversations, Shin Bet does not have to go through the court. It is all done between the head of Shin Bet and the head of the country, the prime minister. And knowing what was going on between these two, and we know from Ronen Bar that the Shin Bet head was asked to tap on conversations of civil individuals. What would Zini do if he's asked to follow people related to those protesters, for example? Second thing, assuming there will be elections in Israel in a year and a half, and I do hope that they take place and in a fair manner, Shin Bet is in charge of preparing some opinions, secret opinions, on Knesset member candidates that shouldn't be elected. Can we imagine a situation in which a candidate would be deemed unfit because of a Shin Bet investigation? Thinking about the Arab society, for example, the number of the mandates of Arab candidates in the Knesset would be much smaller. Here's another scenario. if the Shin Bet could kosher, so to speak, people like Baruch Marzel. Another thing is we know that the Shin Bet is in charge of giving clarities, security clearance for some candidates. Can we assume that because of Shin Bet opinions, some people would not receive their security clearance? So these are very critical points. And Yair, you as an activist of the protest against the judicial reform, is there a fear that stems out of disappointment that you personally can think of? Of course, what a question. This person could finish the protest movement. You have to understand, if the head of a Shin Bet, it's really important to look at the reality in the eye. If his enemy, quote unquote, who is he acting against? If the attorney general is the enemy because she is not promoting what he believes in, then he will use the whole system against the person who put some obstacles on the way of the prime minister. Now, there's nothing easier than to shut down the protest movement. Let's go back to reality. When you look at the Rav Kook movement, the Hilo youth, for example, from the age of 0, from very young age, they learn that the police and the Shin Bet are not part of them, so they're not really fazed by it. But if they grow up to believe that the Shin Bet is theirs, the police is theirs, and it's a part of them, then if you look at people who go to the street to protest, there aren't enough authorities, education, and courage to face the most terrible threat. Let's say you're being detained, and if you just receive a phone call from a Shin Bet person, that's enough to threat you. You are not going to go out to the street and protest. It shuts you down. And I'm not talking about the fact that they can detain you at the airport. Why? Because he believes that you are a threat by your behavior, and you could create a wave that would hurt the prime minister. You would be detained. This is how the protest movement is being shut down. Up to date, the protest is still alive and kicking because there's still a police until Ben Gvir was there. And look at what's going on now. People are afraid. This is how you shut down the protest. If this person wants it, there will be no protest. I'm saying it in unequivocal terms. It's not going to work out. So you're asking me about the powers that this person has? If our fears turn out to be correct, we'll find out, we'll discover that whatever was done to the Hilo youth will be done to our people. And I don't see how we can oppose to that. Let me add one thing. One of the things that people told us before Ben Gvir became the head of the police, we were told that the police represents the state, and we saw how the Israeli police collapsed into oneself very quickly. So I assume it can happen in the Shin Bet too, even though there are some professionals there. I want people to understand there's a classical example, and that's the military rabbinate. They used to work only with religious people, and then they took Rabbi Gonsky to head them. He is a Tau person. He entered the military rabbinates, kicked everyone out, and brought his own people. And now the whole military rabbinates is a branch, so to speak, of the Kook rabbinate. Tomorrow morning, who stops him from firing the Shin Bet people and appointing his own people. There's also the Elkanah method. Eli Sadan from the Ali Yeshiva came up with that. And let me just say that Ben Caspit published that Eli Sadan was the one to recommend Zini as a military secretary. So the Elkanah method says that it's a mitzvah, it's a precept to appoint your person in order to be able to change all the systems from within. But tomorrow he can appoint his own people. It's hard to explain the power. I myself haven't understood that until I spoke to Ami Ayalon. Ami Ayalon was the one to explain that to me. Let's talk about the hostages. We know that Ronen Bar was very involved in the hostage deals negotiation before he was removed because of Qatargate. And since then, we haven't seen any of the hostages return. Do you have anything to say about the Zini family's stance regarding the hostages? What's the preference? Zini himself was quoted saying that he is against the hostage deal. This is an eternal war. He said that to Herzi Halevi, the previous chief of staff. Later, all kind of his own people in the media say that he meant to say something different, but that quote, I am against hostage deals and this is an eternal war, this quote was never refuted or opposed. So eternal war, we know that every high commander in the army says that more military pressure will not bring about the release of the hostages. It's an eternal war. No, an eternal war is something else. We have to use and understand their language. They believe they is the Tau people, right? The Tau followers. The Tau followers have two bases, the political basis, the Noam party, and their executive arm, which are the pre-military mechinas. Zini is an alum of one of those yeshivas, and they educate their people to find a role in those systems and change them from within. An eternal war is that we, the Jewish people, fight the war of redemption. Eternal means not that it's not going to stop, but when we occupy all the territories of the promised land and we apply the Torah rule, then we'll have redemption. So when now, according to them, this whole war is a blessing. It's a gift that God gave us. Now, you might come and say, yeah, but there are some people who die. True, but they don't do the personal calculation. They look at the bigger picture. They say, all of those processes, all of those disasters promote redemption. For example, the Holocaust, with all of its terrible things, brought about the establishment of the State of Israel. This war, too, is a redemptive, miraculous war, and its goal is to promote redemption. So if you ask why did 1,200 have to die, and they will say it was in order for the people in Israel to understand that the people in Gaza are the Amalek, they need to be killed. This is why the 1,200 were killed. When you say eternal war, it means that you are fighting the redemptive war, and your goal is to apply the rule of the Torah. This is what his wife says. He can keep his mouth shut, but when this is what is being taught at his home, you cannot say that he does not teach towards it. So, bringing redemption versus the life of the hostages than the redemption of the state of Israel and the occupation of Gaza. The sanctity of the land of Gaza is higher in the priority, in its priority. If you don't occupy and make Gaza Jewish, you'll have more dead, more hostages. If you bring back the hostages, you will have in the future more hostages. It's not just a strategic war. When Zini speaks in a memorial and says, we need to remember that our enemies and our defenders are the God defenders, we understand what weight he gives to the land. And the land is not just the Morag border. It's not one more kilometer. He speaks about the return of the kingdom of Israel. That's the beginning of redemption. He says that, not only his environment. This is from his speeches in memorials and in ceremonies. And I shared some link that Esti Segal from Restart IL prepared. These are all of his quotes. They're in Hebrew, but they can be translated into English maybe. One more question, let me just say. Please send the messages to myself or to Shimrit. We see the questions in the chat. There's a point here that keeps coming back, and that's the procedure, the process of appointing him. What can stop this appointment? And one more thing that I meant to ask, do we have anything against religious people? Does the fact that he has a kippah on his head, that we had a head of the Shin Bet, Yoram Cohen, he wore a kippah. I don't know his background, but maybe he was from the West Bank too. So let's talk a little bit more about the process. And are we talking about religion or are we talking about messianism? So the religious hues, Yair can talk about them, but this is a claim that people threw at me. What do you want? It's only because he's wearing a kippah? And the answer is no. Zini is not Al-Sheikh, the previous head of police. He's not Mandelblit, the previous attorney general. Both of them wore a kippah, and there were some fears when they were about to be appointed, but for good or bad, they were a part of the system. They came from the system on which they had control after they were appointed. They were not parachuted by someone. And the second thing, and we see it through and through in our conversation, the Rabbi Tau is not similar, is not anything like other more moderate currents in the national Zionist world regarding the process. As we said, the Grunis committee, headed by Asher Grunis, the judge, is the one that can confirm it, but their mandate is very limited. They asked for people to submit their oppositions. They received 10,000 oppositions, which is unheard of. So the Grunis committee needs to sit and discuss those oppositions, but their mandate is only about the process itself. They only look at if Zini is corrupt or not corrupt. And regarding also the character of the appointment, to see if there's a meaningful problem with it. The Grunis committee is not going to deal with the environment, the school where he comes from. And we need to say that people who wish to defend Zini and say, is it all because of the fact that he wears a kippah? He was a commander, he was a general in the IDF. And yes, it's true, he was. But Zini, let me say differently, he is a fighter and a commander who risked his soldiers, lost soldiers. He is a courageous fighter. But for the last 10 years, he's been kept away by the various chiefs of staff from the heart of the matter. He was appointed as a commander of a very marginal brigade. He was in charge of training, and he only received his rank because of some inside politics inside the IDF. And there's a convention that I can sign on that this was supposed to be his last job. You do it and then you leave. To appoint this person, also because of this reason, is another proof of the fact that he is unfit. And just to finish on the process point, you said there's a committee and there's a point in time that until that point, if nothing happens, then the appointment will be confirmed. What can the Attorney General do? The Attorney General got involved in the appointment so far because of the lack of conflict of interest with Ronen Bar. So first, the Attorney General intervened in order to stop the firing of Ronen Bar, and then she did it again. She said that there would be 60 days to finish the Qatar investigation, and only after that, Netanyahu can submit the appointment or the candidacy of Zini to the Grunis committee. I do not. I don't believe that the Grunis committee can do much. I wish I would be proved wrong. We have 8 more minutes. So in conclusion, Yair, would you like to say anything? And then Shimrit has some issues she would like to talk to. Everyone is asking, what can we do from here? Maybe I'll talk about it at the end, but do you have any ideas? We'll be happy to hear it. Yair, I spoke my word, so your turn. Let me say the following. You asked about religion. There's a fight here that is not just internal Israeli. It has to do with any Jew, wherever Jews live. What happens in Israel affects Jews all over the world. We have a group here, we should call it by its name. It's a messianic group. And by messianic, I mean a group that I don't think we ever had in Jewish history. Maybe it has some similarities to the first destruction of the temple, but it's a Jewish group that is a subcurrent in Judaism that prepares everything that the liberal Judaism opposed to, women's rights, other denominations in the Jewish world. And they drag the state of Israel to areas where Jews will find themselves a pariah because of just being Jewish. And I feel that if until now the Jewish people stood still whenever the IDF and the Shin Bet was mentioned, I think that every Jew all over the world should worry that it will get to them, because the state of Israel, at the end of the day, is built on the Jewish powers and the Jewish support all over the world. And if the Jewish world does not stand up and say enough, it's not going to end. And if you ask me, what should we do? Every Jew all over the world should come and say enough. It has to do with me. It is not just an internal Israeli issue. And let me just underscore, we keep apologizing and calling it liberal Judaism. No, it's Judaism. They are those who are the extreme ones. The value of life, we see it through the hostages and the soldiers that are being sacrificed. Judaism is Judaism, and there's extreme Judaism. We shouldn't talk about extreme Judaism and liberal Judaism. It's extreme Judaism and Judaism. Anything else, Hilo? I thought you wanted to add something. No, Hilo does not want to add anything. So Shimrit, I will give you the floor. Let me see if there are some questions in the chat, and then we'll finish with that. Thank you. Thank you so much, Hilo and Yair. It was fascinating to listen to you. So critical in order to understand where we're at. This alarm is terrifying. Understanding where we're headed to, things can deteriorate even further than the situation here. I'm going to switch into English for just a second.
Thank you so much for being here with us today. These are really critical times, as Ophir said, and Yair and Hilo. What happening now on the ground and the invasion to Gaza is terrible, and we're all like, I think, like sitting at home and think, what the hell we can do from here? And this is exactly the time where we need all hands on deck. And we are planning at UnXeptable to organizing actions towards the high holidays to make sure we bring the alarm to your local synagogues, and also to put a pressure on the Jewish establishments, on the federations and JCRC to take an urgent action because this madness has to stop. And we do have a lot what to do with here, like what to do from here. As a follow-up to this webinar, you're all going to receive a Google form we're creating with a list of options where you can choose how to take an action either locally or nationally. And as Yair said, it's on us too, and we have a role from here. And you are our incredible community. Together, we can really make an impact. And we have to make this impact to end this horrific war and the annihilation in Gaza, to stop the messianic forces and to bring all the hostages back home. So please keep eyes on your email and tune into the Google form. And we hope to create really meaningful actions towards the holiday. תודה רבה to all of you. Almost שנה טובה, and we can say amen to תכלה שנה וקללותיה, and we wish for better days ahead. תודה רבה.
Thank you, everyone who joined. If there's one thing, we promise to publish a section of this video and we'll send it to you as fast as we can, so you can send it to your organizations. We keep fighting for the future of our country. We're together in this. Hilo, Yair, thank you so much. May it be a better year. Thank you. Bye-bye.